Tell me some about some of the dark times that, you've been through and how you managed to get through those.
I lost every single thing I owned. Within a matter of weeks, I had lost my partner, I had lost my home, I had lost my job. And these were all of the, pillars of my identity. Everything that defined me is gone. So what's left? Who do I want to be? And how do I want to show up in the world?
No Bullshit Talks is a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. There's too much bullshit out there, especially when it comes to business. This podcast aims to highlight what's true and what's not in the world of entrepreneurship, bringing you honest and raw conversations about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. Each week, my guest will be a high-performing entrepreneur sharing the ups and downs of their journey and helping you prepare for the road ahead, while providing you with actionable insights and absolute gems of knowledge. Stay tuned as I introduce this week's guest. She's a former barrister, but now full-on entrepreneur. She sits on boards, scouts cool startups for VC firms, is a delegate for the UN Women UK, and now runs her own retreat company. She's a phenomenal person and someone that I'm proud to call a good friend. I bring you the incredible Natalie Connor.
Well, I'm Natalie Connor to No Bullshit Talks. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to introduce you because you've had a very interesting kind of career. You're like a barrister turned VC turned wellness expert. You've been all over the place, right? So I love to ask people just to tell them, just basically start off with their journey and how did you get to this moment in time where you're at today?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird journey for sure. I spent just over 8 years practicing as a barrister, wearing a wig all day, fighting for a living, but realised that fundamentally I just didn't want to do that. It was kind of making me into a more abrasive version of myself that I was taking home that I didn't like, and causing me kind of the wrong kinds of stress. So I packed it all in and went into disruptive tech, basically because I've been self-employed my whole career. And I thought, who's going to employ me without really kind of imposing loads of rules on me? And I thought, tech, they won't know what they're doing. They'll be so happy to have me, which was true. So I went in as a GC, as a general counsel at first, and did that for a couple of years and bounced around a few different very cool businesses that were backed by some big VCs, and led them through the scale-up phase and then through COVID, so kind of dealing with furlough and lots of redundancies and things like that. And then wound up at a small fintech called Semper, which I ended up kind of stepping up to be a director of after one of the original co-founders left sort of straight out of the gate, and had the best time with a couple of French co-founders, Matthias and Balthazar, and our small team. And last year we sold it to Crowdcube, which is the kind of big UK and European leader in crowdfunding, which has been awesome. So now I do kind of a hybrid legal strategy job for them. That's kind of the day job. And then for the last couple of years, I've also been focusing on my wellness business, which is called Elevate. And that is kind of grounded in longevity science, but also kind of informed by my own personal health journey through burnout, through postural issues, niggles, injuries, loads of kind of marginalized female health issues that I've suffered with, that probably we've all suffered with but don't talk about, and looking at holistic ways to deal with that and to set people up to kind of live better for longer. So that's my true passion, and I spend a lot of time organising retreats and events.
That's a crazy journey that you've gone to get there, all over the place. But I want to rewind a little bit because I want to speak about the lawyer side, just because, I think this podcast is for entrepreneurs. Most people watching it are probably entrepreneurial. Not everyone's going to come from a corporate background necessarily, and definitely not necessarily a lawyer with the wig and actually barrister style. I want to know, I guess, how similar is what you went through, like you see it on TV, and like I guess there's not that many UK legal dramas, but maybe that was it. And Anatomy of a Scandal. I don't know if you saw that one on Netflix.
I did see that.
Yeah, a few of them are coming up now.
Silk. Did you see
that? I haven't seen that, but
I don't really watch them because it's like watching a show about work.
Is it cringe?
Yeah, a bit. Aspects of it are true. It's just people aren't really like shagging in the toilets and chambers. Like, it's just not that dramatic and exciting. So sadly,
but all the other boring stuff is true.
Probably, yeah.
It's dramatic and there's like tense in the courtroom.
Yeah, and I mean, it also kind of depends on the area of law. I mean, criminal law is pretty sexy. It can be in a sort of depressing way.
Sexy.
You know, my field. I mean, I did some sexy cases actually by the end. Like, you know, I did the FA inquiry into historic child sex abuse in football. I did a lot of work kind of in the wake of Me Too. I represented Zelda Perkins in front of the Women and Equalities Commission on like NDAs, the stuff that she'd been forced to sign. She was Harvey Weinstein's former assistant. I did a massive equal pay case for thousands and thousands of female cashiers in Tesco against and it was claiming that they were doing work of equal value to the sort of male shelf stockers, but it was going to be like, at the time that I left the bar, it was worth like £5 billion, that case. So I mean, I did some cool stuff, you know, and I learned a lot. And yeah, it was sexy. And then at times it was really dry, which I think is probably true of anyone's professional life, right? Even entrepreneurship can have its dry moments. So.
Yeah, and actually you've just exactly pointed that out, because I think that, you know, the purpose of this podcast is actually to highlight that. And everything that I do is about highlighting what's real in entrepreneurship, because most of the time it isn't as interesting as people say, or isn't as successful and glamorous as people say. And just like how we see on TV, it's all like, you know, drama in the courtroom, and like I said, people screaming in toilets, and just like, and that just doesn't happen most of the time. So I'm just paperwork and, you know, research and discovery.
That is the sad truth. But yeah, there's a nice mix, you know, got to keep us on our toes.
But VC world, that's a massive change of pace, right? So obviously still, you know, corporate, still like that sort of thing, but it's definitely like massively startup based, right? So it's very, very different. What made you go into that for a start? Like, you know, what made you transition, and how did you find it?
I mean, to be honest, I had a bit of a crisis, you know, because I made it to the bar, and I made it to one of the best barristers' chambers in the country. And I'm from pretty humble beginnings. You know, I don't have family in the law. I didn't have any help. I'm not privately educated, and I'm not Oxbridge educated. So I was very much in the minority of people who kind of made it to that level in my field. And I'm a woman. I mean, it had to be. And you know, it's a problem when my chambers wheeled me out as like the poster girl for diversity. Me as like, I'm a woman, and I'm like, you know, state school educated, but that's really all I have to say for myself. That's how not diverse the bar still is in places.
Crazy.
I ended up transitioning to a different set before I left, and they were far better. But yeah, it's pretty problematic. But I mean, how did I decide? A lot of my identity was tied up in being a barrister, in the fact that I'd kind of made it. And so I wasn't really ready to leave the law behind, even though I kind of felt like maybe I wanted to. So I thought a stepping stone for me would be, okay, I want to do a legal role, but I want it to be sexy and fun and really dynamic and fast-paced, and in an area that's like really mission-driven that I can like give a shit about, you know, because a lot of the time you're doing cases in court and you really don't care whether your client wins or loses, to be honest, particularly in like big commercial cases. So I was like, I want to get behind a brand that I can really back, and tech was really the place for that, you know. And back when I was kind of first getting into it in like 2019, you know, it was the heyday. It was like the height of the bull market, you know, there was VC money everywhere. Everyone was in kind of hyper growth mode. So it was a really exciting time to get into it. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's such a big change, and I think that there's probably a lot of people who are watching who are either thinking about being an entrepreneur or like, you know, and it's just that's already a shift in itself. And I think like that must have been a really difficult decision. But then now you're literally running your own thing with Elevate, and you've transitioned again, and you're sort of still doing a bit of everything, aren't you? But like, what again made you do that transition to that entrepreneurship?
So, I mean, I guess there was an element of entrepreneurship already in the sense that I joined, a range of startups, and the most recent one was seed stage, and it was small. We built it from the ground up, and when you're a GC as well, you learn the nuts and bolts of how to actually, build a business and how to actually make it work. So I kind of had that knowledge. I could kind of take that with me. And then Elevate, as I say, was born out of the fact that I worked out through a lot of coaching and NLP work that one of my biggest values is ownership. In fact, my 3 biggest values are health, ownership, and hospitality. And I always knew that I wanted to start something of my own, but I didn't really want to start a tech company. I didn't want to get on that kind of hamster wheel of VC funding and like constantly having to justify myself to like external shareholders. And so it kind of happened quite organically as a result of all of these issues that I'd had, and the fact that I'm really evangelical about my own health journey and the amazing kind of practices and modalities and practitioners that I've kind of discovered along the way to like genuinely set me up now in a place where I think I'm such a well person, and I think I have all of that to thank, despite the fact that my life is crazy. And so combining those 3 values kind of made me realize that what I really want to be able to do is share the knowledge that I've learned over so many years in a really piecemeal way, like share that with other people, help them to kind of, access those tools in a really easy way. And frankly, like keep really, in particular women, busy women in high-powered jobs, and give them the tools they need to thrive, rather than just kind of, barely keep their head above water and maybe end up packing it all in because it's just too much in the end. So it's not about encouraging everyone to just sack their jobs off and go and become yoga teachers. It's about, stay in that, crazy corporate world, but here are the tools you need to make sure that you're going to be okay.
Because that's what you've done, right? You're still in that corporate world, really. So you haven't just, like I said, sacked everything off and then become not quite a yoga teacher, but you're running retreats and all that sort of stuff. You haven't, I guess, fully taken the plunge. Is that because you are not prepared to yet? Is that because finances aren't there? Is that because you still love what you do? And what is that balance like? Do you see yourself transitioning fully to become like a full entrepreneur?
I think it might happen at some point. I think for the first time in a long time, I'm not putting pressure on myself to just kind of reach the next arbitrary goal. And kind of doing what I'm doing with Elevate, it gives me so much like pure, unadulterated joy and passion. And I don't make a huge amount of money from it. Frankly, you don't go into the wellness event space expecting to make a load of money straight out of the gate. That wasn't my motivation for it. The motivation was, I really love this and I really believe in it. And I think eventually I can probably monetize that more, but I don't want to start with that in mind, because I think the nature of what I'm trying to convey and deliver to people, I think it would lose some of its authenticity if I was coming at it from a place of like, these are the margins I need to make. It's all about like genuinely trying to help people. So maybe eventually, but in the meantime, I am really enjoying what I'm doing as part of my day job too, which I think I'm so lucky to be able to say that.
Absolutely.
And that wasn't the case, several years ago. So I've kind of cultivated that life, if you like, over many years.
I think everything you just said there is so important, because like, why would you give something up if you love doing it anyway? That's what I feel like. And I hear these people going, oh, you're going to retire. And I was like, but if you love what you do, why do you need to retire? Like, and if you're healthy and everything, just keep going. And the same as like, you just said about, you're not in it for the money at the moment, and obviously you want to monetize it. But I think like if money then becomes a requirement, it then takes away a lot of that passion, because you're doing it because you love it, and that's why you're so good at it, and that's why it's coming out like that. And actually having your day job, which you also love too, which is great, like is again a valuable position to be in, you can now know comfortably that you're on a salary that you can live on and you're comfortable, that you don't necessarily need to make money off that, so you can just concentrate on making it amazing for everyone else. It's an ideal position.
Exactly. I think it would be different if I hated my day job and I was looking for an out, but at the moment it's a nice balance. I'm able to make a comfortable living doing what I'm doing in the day job, and I can grow, elevate, and maybe there'll come a time where I can edge into it more. Maybe I can do sort of fewer days doing the day job and whatever. Like there's a way to kind of edge in. Sometimes, I'm all for people like diving in head first in the right circumstances. And there could be a world in which I could have done that with Elevate and it could have worked. But I just think you have to do it in the way that's right for you. And I think I can grow Elevate in that way. It's not like I'm trying to get first mover advantage or anything like that. You know, obviously I think what we offer is unique, but it's always going to be that way. I think there's always going to be space for like plenty of people to play in this space. So I'm not in a rush.
That's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you're going to have better results that way. But I do want to dive into the wellness industry a little bit more, because you mentioned already, you know, that there's a lot going on in the wellness industry. You don't think that you can necessarily make loads of money off the gate doing your wellness events and stuff. So I do want to talk about it, because I think that the wellness industry has, like, you know, I guess pros and cons to it. There's definitely some bad rep, some obviously great rep, and I think that there seems to be everyone running a retreat now. I must have met like 10 people this week who apparently have a retreat, and it's like, oh, what is going on? Why is everyone running a retreat? And then obviously the fitness craze and wellness craze on social media is such a big thing. Everyone seems to be an expert, and everyone's launching a recipe book, and everyone has all these techniques, and what is going on? I mean, how on earth do you know, position yourself as a legitimate, like, science-backed, you know, company and actually get the respect that you deserve when there's all this bullshit out there? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there is a lot of bullshit. I guess broadly, it's good that wellness is on the agenda and people are talking about it. And I think we probably have Gen Z to thank for that in a way. But there's a lot of bullshit within that. And for me, what bullshit looks like in this industry is people, whoever they might be, influencers, fitfluencers, who will come at you and preach that their way is the only way. And that, to me, is like the antithesis of true wellness, because for me, you know, every single person's body and mind is different. And so that's, I guess, how I'm coming at it with Elevate. You know, like it's unique in the sense that there's a lot of one-on-one and there's a lot of tailoring to your particular needs and your particular body type through, you know, the fitness side, through the functional medicine side. And, you know, I have this conversation every time I run a retreat, you know, with my chefs or with new venues. I explain, you know, I'm not interested in an all vegan menu, and I'm not interested in hiring someone to come and facilitate who's just going to have everyone do a load of burpees for an hour. Like, that's just not helpful, and it's not conducive to longevity. So, you know, there's that approach. And then there's the fact that, I mean, how do you establish yourself as a credible business in this field? I mean, the facilitators that I work with are truly, truly the creme de la creme. And I feel like I can say that with conviction because I have been a client of all of them for years. And I am, as you can potentially tell, very type A, pretty skeptical, hard to impress. You know, I've had a lot of trainers over the years. I've done a lot of health stuff over the years. And these people who I've brought on this journey with me are the best in the business. So yeah, I mean, my trainer, Scott, he's the head of movement for Chelsea FC women's team. You know, he had a lot to do with the Lionesses win.
Yeah.
He's incredible. He's honestly got me through so many niggles and injuries that every other practitioner under the sun couldn't touch. And within a month of lifting weights with him in the right way for my body, I was out of pain. The same goes for Lara, my functional medicine practitioner, you know, and I've had a myriad of health concerns. And like, to be frank, I'm talking IBS, recurrent UTIs, skin issues, hormonal issues, like, and she was the first person to explain to me that all of those are linked. You know, like when you go to your GP with that kind of thing, they're just trying to put you in a box. Mm-hmm. Here's a cream for that. Here's some antibiotics for that. She was the first person who introduced me to this concept of functional medicine and genuinely healed me of these things that I had since childhood that I thought I would never recover from. So like the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And the same goes for, you know, Leo and Lisa. Lisa was my life coach. The NLP, neuro-linguistic programming work that I did with her that I kind of alluded to earlier is literally, I think, why I'm here now. Like, she helped me uncover what my values were, what my limiting beliefs were. She does a lot of that work with us on retreat. And then Leo, who does like multidisciplinary mindfulness stuff, breath work, cold water stuff. Like, because of him, I'm in my ice bath every morning on my terrace, and it has changed the game for me. But, you know, and then the same goes for like when people come on my retreats, it's taking on a bit of a life of its own now, because people come away and they're like, this has been transformational. And, you know, the connections people make, or the decisions that people make within their own lives. And then they come back to me, you know, a year later, and they're like, because of you, I was able to quit the job I hate. I was able to make these changes in my life. And I think that's the proof is in the pudding there in the testimonials. So
I think that's amazing. And you've just like listed a bunch of people who obviously you really, really believe in, and you can tell from the way you're talking about them. And I think that's the key for everything. It's like, if you genuinely have good people, then anything's possible, and you're going to be doing so much better. And like, it's the same thing in every industry. Like, if you just have the right people around, and like I said about the wellness industry and how it is, and all that bullshit out there about saying there's one way to do things, and that is what it is. I see that on Instagram all the time. It's the same in business. I get so riled up when they go, this is what you do, this is how you have a morning routine, and this is how you achieve XYZ. I was like, no, there are so many other ways of doing this. This is not what it is. And I think that definitely is bullshit. And I think it's so exciting to hear all these people, and like you said, of just where you feel like you're a new person, and I just, well, I'm going on your retreat, and I hope that same thing happens to me. Although I'm terrified to get in this ice bath.
You're gonna love it. It's gonna change your life.
Honestly, I feel like if I end up having an ice bath, I'll be shocked. But let's see what happens.
Absolutely.
But do you want to touch on some of those health things that you mentioned too? Because that's a lot of stuff. I know that lots of people listening are aware of things that they've had, and you mentioned about the GP, and the GP is even worse than that. Like, with GPs now, you can only talk about one thing. And I've been there so many times, and I'm like, well, I've also got this. Oh no, one thing only. I'm like, but there could be links. And actually, if you know about the other things, it actually helps get to your diagnosis quicker. And they don't do it. So it's actually ridiculous. But, I feel like lots of people out there have health concerns or have health problems and are actually ignoring them, or they are aware of them. Talk me through some of those health issues that you've had, and like how it's actually impacted you, because you obviously super grateful for where you are now, but you weren't always in this place, and you weren't always as healthy and as great as you are now. So tell me about some of the dark times that you've been through, and how you managed to get through those.
Yeah, from a physical health perspective, some of the stuff I described, I've honestly had since I was a young child. I had, digestive issues from childhood. My mum suffered with them, and I think there's an element of like genetics in there. And, that ties in a lot as you age with hormonal stuff and skin stuff and everything else. And it's been pretty debilitating at times, honestly. And I've, tried a lot of different medications, which have probably actually exacerbated things, to be honest. And that's been super hard. And then I guess on the kind of mental health front, which is what brought me to kind of the mindfulness aspect of what we now kind of deliver through Elevate and all the stuff that I've done. I'm a big believer in the notion that nobody kind of comes to mindfulness without having gone through some pretty dark shit. Because if you haven't really experienced anything difficult, you kind of have no reason to turn to those tools, And so, my like rock bottom moment was coming up to 3 years ago now. And, friends tell me I should write a book about this because it's just so nuts. But, everything went wrong for me in my life in one go. Like my partner left me. We were in a difficult situation in terms of me and my physical state. I won't kind of go into the details of that, but I was in a very vulnerable position physically when he left me with no warning. 2 weeks later, my house flooded. I lost every single thing I owned. And this is like a house that I'd hustled to buy, a few years prior, again, with no help. I lost every single thing I owned kind of overnight. And I called on, my recent ex to come and help me. Like, he was the only person I knew in London at the time who had a big car, and he just like ignored the call. My neighbours were like evacuated from our homes on boats, by the fire brigade. And then within another week of that, I ended up essentially in like a whistleblowing situation at work, in a relatively new role, where I was being asked to do some dodgy shit and refused to do it. And I was forced out of that job. And so within a matter of weeks, I had lost my partner, I had lost my home, I had lost my job. And these were all of the like pillars of my identity, like in a way, like especially work. But then I guess also my home was my safe space. Like, I was a really like home oriented person. And I was just sitting in this flat that my insurers were paying for, in Fulham, with none of my own stuff, looking at the smoking embers of my life, thinking, what is the point? Like, what is the point in me being alive? Not in a kind of, suicidal sense, but in a just like, everything that defined me is gone. So what's left? And weirdly, that's kind of what led me to where I am now. Very gradually building the pieces of like, okay, well, who do I want to be? And how do I want to show up in the world? And so it led me to, a lot of these practices. It led me to life coaching and NLP. It led me to meditation and breath work, and functional movement. And honestly, without it, I wouldn't have discovered some of these techniques. I probably wouldn't have healed from all of the physical health stuff, and I wouldn't have started Elevate, honestly. I just wouldn't have. So I've got to be thankful for it, weirdly.
That was a big story. That's a lot of stuff to have happened. We won't go into man bashing or anything. I feel like, that's a conversation over a glass of wine we can do. But also it's not even that. It's just, when people let you down, and it's so disappointing and so demoralizing, and you're going through the hardest time. Like, so you literally lost everything. Your home, people weren't there for you. You said, you're so down, not in a suicidal way, but even if you were, that wouldn't even be so far-fetched considering that situation you're in. And then health-wise, it's just when you have these major life things and you have to deal with it all in one go, it's so overwhelming. Your emotions and brain just can't deal with that. So there are many other people I'm sure would have reacted way worse than you. And I feel like I'm totally with you on the whole, if you've had that sense of adversity, you're so much better at dealing with things, and it brings you to where you are. And I look back at all the worst moments in my life, and I feel like if they didn't happen, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So you do have to be a bit grateful, but oh my God, that's not easy, especially at the time. So I want to go back to those moments, if you're okay to kind of recall your feelings and just how you kind of got to where you are now, because everyone's going to be watching this thinking, oh my God, this woman's so strong. Like, you're this powerhouse of a woman, you're a barrister, VC, you work at VC firms, and you're doing your own business, and you're like this, you said you're super healthy, super fit, great mindset, everything. You seem like, an amazing space. And you went through all that, but, you obviously weren't how put together, and it's only just 3 years ago. Talk me through that journey. And obviously you mentioned all those people who obviously helped you along the way, but I want to know that journey a little bit, from that Natalie of 3 years ago to now.
Yeah, no, I mean, when it all happened, I actually remember making a very conscious choice to try and handle it in the best way I could. It's a couple of years prior to that, my sort of big long-term relationship had come to an end, and the way I dealt with it then was, I was in my late 20s, and I just got really drunk and dated everyone and just kind of lived my best life and didn't process my feelings until 18 months later. And I had a moment standing in this rental flat where I was like, I'm going to make a different choice this time. So I gave up alcohol for a year. And I mean, I wasn't a big drinker, but actually lawyers, we do a lot of, let's call it kind of grey area drinking. I wouldn't say I had a problem, but
high functional alcoholics.
Yeah, maybe not that much in my case, but I was definitely drinking a couple of times a week at least, and it would be quite a lot of wine in one go. And I made a conscious choice. I was like, alcohol's not going to be my friend right now. It's really not. And then I mean, it sounds a bit tragic, but I basically spent 6 months just lying in the bath every night crying. And just kind of feeling my feelings, which I hadn't really done before. And then I frog marched myself into therapy straight out of the gate as well, because I basically felt and a lot of it stemmed from the ex, and from feeling how can somebody lack humanity to that extent? Regardless of the fact that you clearly feel differently about me and our relationship is over, how can you leave me in essentially a life or death situation? And that was just hard. It was hard for me to come to terms with the fact that I had misjudged somebody's character to such a degree. Like, I didn't really know how to make my peace with that. And I thought, I've got to get some therapy, because otherwise this is going to take root in me. And, you know, I don't want to become somebody who hates men or who distrusts everyone. Like, I just don't want that to happen to me. So I did a lot of talking therapy. Did a lot more crying. I'm not a crier as well, I should say. I did more crying that year than I think I'd done in my whole life prior to that. But then, you know, feeling your feelings helps you process things, you know, and I was talking it through with people, and I was not drinking, and I was working out. I'd already met Scott at that point, so we were training together, you know, every week through the pandemic, outdoors. And I reckon that had a huge impact on just like my mindset and my vitamin D intake, if nothing else, you know. And I think, and gradually I basically, the decision I kind of made was, I've lost control of everything in my life. And I was a bit of a control freak before that. And I sort of said to myself, okay, well, what can you control? Like, what is actually within your control? And very little is, right? We can't control other people. We can't control the elements. We can't control our own health to a certain degree. I started with, I can control like how I show up for other people. I actually kind of started with like RAKs, like random acts of kindness, and making sure that I could show up for the people that needed me. And yeah, like that coupled with the NLP I was doing and the values work just kind of helped me find my way, not even back to myself, but to the person like that I should have been all along, I guess. That sounds a bit poetic.
I love that. I think that so many of us are in a place where we're not even sure who we really are. I think that's what most people are like. I think that, and it sounds, again, a bit crazy, doesn't it? But I think, you know, we're all influenced by society and social media and all that sort of stuff. And our parents, we are trying to aspire to be who we think our parents want us to be, or like someone else wants to be, or impressing a guy or whatever. People do this sort of stuff, right? And like I said, you don't want to be, you know, hating men, but it's just men. It's just whoever, you know, lets you down and does that. But I think the way I used to try and get over things like that was, you know, the person you fell in love with doesn't exist. Actually, that's not the person you believe they were. And actually, so if that person doesn't exist anymore, you can't really, you know, and it's easier said than done. The feelings are there, but you know, people will always disappoint you. And exactly like you said, you know, we can't control people. We can't control a lot of things. And actually, that's what's really scary. But we can control the way we respond to things, right? We can control all of that. And that's why everything has to come back down to us and working on ourselves, because we're the only ones that we can control and the only things and it has to come from within. And everything is about that. And it's taken me, God knows how long, to realize that too. And I think like what you're saying about adversity, I think that's it. I think I didn't discover all those things until I went through really difficult times, or even some stuff in my past now that's been dredged up that has really, really made me rethink things and rethink how I processed that previously, or how I didn't process that more to the point, right? I just kind of dismissed it, parked it somewhere, and actually then seeing other people's reactions to it. And, you know, and it was just all of that sort of stuff. But I think that everyone has something in their past that they probably, you know, aren't processing, and actually is more impactful on them than they realize, you know. And I think that, you know, you're saying about the strongest people, the best people who kind of get things are the ones who've been through bad stuff. But, you know, I hear people go, nothing bad's ever really happened to me. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, or do you think maybe some people are that lucky? Some people are that lucky, I guess, but there's probably things that they can just parked. And
yeah, I think up to a point some people are that lucky, but the thing is, right, everyone's going to face something at some point, because at some point, I think, you know, you and I had the misfortune or the fortune, depends how you look at it, of going through some stuff earlier than a lot of people and having to navigate that. But everyone at some point is going to have to deal with illness and death in the family and money issues. Like everyone's going to face something, you know, like no one has a perfect life. It's just that maybe in your 30s, a lot of people haven't got there yet. And so in a way, I kind of think I've front loaded my bad luck here, you know, and it means that when I have to face things like that, hopefully I'll be better equipped for it. But yeah, like to come back to your point about the best people, I guess it's not so much like the best people, but for me, the people I connect with the most are invariably the people who have just been through some serious shit, because they've had a reason to look at the world differently and look at what they want from life in a way that you never otherwise would. And they've done the work on themselves. And I think when you've been through some shit, like you do see the world in that way. You kind of really appreciate how beautiful life is in a different way. And you want to talk about the deep stuff, and you want to connect with someone on that level. And I think those are just always the people that I'm drawn to.
Yeah, me too. And actually that's how I feel at the moment. I just only want to be around those sort of people because they get it. And actually, like I said, the gratefulness of it, like I just feel like I'm so much, and again, I am grateful for those bad things, because I'm actually happier as a result of those bad things. I'm happier with life. Like I find myself unconsciously, I'm aware of how I react to things. And I'm like, I just don't care about some of the things I used to react to, or like a situation would happen, I'd be like really upset for days, weeks, months about it, or like, react really badly to something, and then I'm just like meh, like, and I move on quite quickly and just park it, because actually there were so many other things that are more important and more beautiful things to appreciate, and actually, like, it just changes how you are. And I think it's so much healthier, which is lovely.
Totally. Life's just literally too short, and nobody really gets that until they've been kind of confronted with whatever it is, abuse or, horrible trauma and disappointment that stems from another person, or just shit luck. Like you just don't realize it until that happens. Otherwise you're just coasting. I was coasting and I didn't even realize it at the time. I was, in a job that I didn't enjoy, but paid me really well and had all of this status attached to it. And I was so proud of having made it when nobody else like me had, that was keeping me in it. But it wasn't for love of the job or love of the work, and actually it was like taking a bit of a toll on me. And I don't think, had this not, because this was all the stuff that happened to me was so humbling, in a way. And I think without that, my ego probably wouldn't have let me make this transition.
Interesting.
So it's kind of, again, like I don't really regret anything in my life, because I just think it's wasted energy. And I'm not sorry that this stuff happened to me. I know that's kind of mental to say, but I'm honestly in the best place I think I've ever been in now. And I wouldn't be if that hadn't happened. I probably would still be at the bar. I'd be absolutely raking it in, but I would be like just kind of low level miserable and not really sure what to do about it. So,
and I mean, probably people are hearing this thinking you're absolutely crazy, but I totally get it, because I feel the same way, and it's kind of nuts when you think about it. But yeah, I think it's an interesting place to be in. I feel very grateful that we are in this place, and I think that hopefully other people will get there, but it's not going to be easy at all. So I would like to get a piece of advice though for people who are going through something. I guess because obviously you've done a transition for career, you've done you've started on your own, you felt like you said you've been at rock bottom, and you bounced back to being where you are now. Like, what advice would you give for those people who are in that situation?
Wow, yeah. I mean, I suppose to take some examples from the things I think I got right in what I did. I mean, gather together the tools that you do have in your armory, because you've always got something, right? Even when you think you've lost everything, you've always got the ability to get outdoors. You've always got the ability to go and do some exercise and raise your heart rate and pump your body full of those endorphins, which just scientifically will make you feel better. You don't have to drink. You have so much agency left. You can't control external things, but you can always control yourself. And I don't mean to say that in like a kind of flippant way, because, when people say, oh, you can just, don't get angry, it's your choice to respond. I mean, it's too simple to say that. Yeah. Of course, things are going to affect you, but I guess the level to which you react, or the level to which you take that on and make that personal and about you, is within your control. Yeah. So start with the toolkit that you have. Lean on good people, find some good people and share, a problem shared is a problem halved. I was lucky that I have amazing family and amazing friends, and that was kind of the one pillar of my happiness that I still had. So I lent on them a lot, and that was, I guess, weird for them, because I was always the strong one. And now I'm back to being that person. I'm the person people lean on. And I think some of my good friends who, historically have had issues, we're not used to me being the vulnerable one, but just try not to be afraid to be vulnerable in that scenario, because like people will want to step up and help you.
I like that. And that's exactly what I think in business too. And I think that there is such a big front of everyone just trying to be successful and life is just going so easily. Like, oh, how's business? Oh, it's amazing. I'm landed this client. We're winning this thing. And like, it sounds, and actually we're struggling deep down inside. But actually, if you just suddenly said, actually, I'm struggling a little bit, I need some help, then people will be there for you. Good people will be there for you. And that's obviously what I'm trying to create in my community, is that, have people around you who are like that, who'll be there for you no matter what. And will step up. And I think if you're vulnerable and you actually are honest with it, they'll appreciate it. They'll be the same back. And actually only good things can happen from that, I think.
Totally. And I mean, entrepreneurship can be a lonely journey. If you're a sole founder, it can be very lonely. And, I've found that my various, founder networking groups, or like people like you or friends that I've made along the way who I can now talk to about my issues, even though they're not in my space. You can get so much empathy and support in that way. And also, I guess another point I wanted to make was that level of like vulnerability and humility, I think, resonates so well at every level of business leadership and entrepreneurship. Like the very best CEOs that I've ever encountered have been the ones who are able to say, do you know what, we've got this wrong, or do you know what, I'm not necessarily clear on the next steps, but this is what I'm going to do about it, rather than people like you say who are just painting this amazing glamorous picture about how everything's going, and then the next week they're firing half the workforce. It just leaves a bit of taste in people's mouths. So
I'd much rather be around someone who where you stand, and they are open and honest about it, because not everyone's going to know every answer, and you wouldn't expect them to, but what you want them to do is tell you the truth and be front with you and want to find the right answer, no matter, and have that passion to do it. And that's all people are asking for. So I think I love that. And I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to ask every guest this season. And it's really just around entrepreneurship and trying to give, I guess, the audience really practical advice and also just, I guess, kind of prepare people for the state of what it looks like. So I want to know from your predictions, whether it's your industry and just in general, what do you think, entrepreneurship is going to look like in the next 12 months? Like, what do you see changing? What do you see getting bigger or anything like that? What do you see it looking like?
I mean, I could answer that in a really boring way and be like, these are the trends I'm seeing in VC and blah, 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 maybe it's not that boring. Things like AI, green tech, like they're all absolutely going to have their like moment. I mean, they're already having a moment, there's trends like that. But I think maybe the more interesting observations are more to do with like demographic. Like I think more and more, we're going to see more and more micro businesses kind of starting, because I think we're now living in this hybrid world where people aren't doing full-time work in the same way. People are starting side hustles more and more. Like I've never known so many people who are starting things of their own. So I think there's just going to be more businesses. I think there's more and more female founded businesses than ever before, which is kind of amazing to see. And I hope we're going to see more of that. I think in terms of like the fundraising landscape, things have been pretty damn hard for the last couple of years, but from everything I'm seeing in VC and through Crowdcube and the various other kind of irons I have in the fire, like things are kind of starting to pick up. And I think, for businesses who want to raise money from VCs and from angels, I think the landscape is going to improve pretty soon. It's already kind of on the turn, which is great because it's been difficult lately. If you wanted to start a business in the last couple of years and raise external capital, it's been bloody hard. But I think things are turning around there. I think it's not going to be quite as like frivolous as 2021, where, literally anyone and their dog could raise like $500,000 from VC. It's not like that anymore. But I think, we're going to see more and more opportunities there. And I think hopefully more and more opportunities for like diverse founders to raise money. Like I think that's actually something that's now genuinely part of the conversation and not just kind of virtue signaling. That's kind of the impression I'm getting. And that's not going to be true everywhere, but I genuinely think there's going to be more of a genuine push towards like, let's see more like diverse businesses flourish.
Well, that's nice. If that happens, that'd be a great thing. And I feel like, everything you're saying, I feel like has already started to come true, because I met someone even this morning, and she's a black woman. So that's, that you said about female fan and more minorities, but she's an architect who's actually now opening her own like salon that she wants to do on the side. So it's like, again, you say that the side hustle, everyone's doing it. So totally echoes everything you've just said. So that's interesting. I would like to just pick up on the point you just said about, you said that every person with a dog was raising $500,000 back in 2021. What changed in 2 years? What do you think actually changed it so it was so difficult now?
I mean, the market crashed, and it kind of happens in waves generally. Like when you look at kind of the history of, the economy, it kind of comes in, 10-year waves. The last financial crisis was 2008. Mm-hmm. Then we recovered. We had a nice little 10-year run, and now we've crashed again. And obviously the macroeconomic climate with everything that's going on, with various conflicts and things around the world, like just cash is no longer cheap. And it's like even worse in the UK with the problem we have with inflation and the base rate and everything else. So money is just not as cheap as it was. So, VCs haven't really been investing, and there's been a massive shift basically away from growth, a focus on growth at any cost, to profitability and being able to show a route to profitability much sooner. So a lot of these big, growing scale-up startups that were trying to acquire customers kind of at any cost but were absolutely nowhere near profitable have really struggled, or they've had to really downsize and really pivot in order to kind of play in this new market. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think there is going to be much more of an emphasis. If you're going to take on external capital, investors are going to be looking to see what your plan is to get to break even and beyond, like in a way, and scrutinize that in a way that they weren't previously. But yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's like the macroeconomic situation has changed.
Yeah. I think the economy has really screwed up a lot of things, and I think loads of businesses struggled last year. And so it'll be really interesting to see what happens this year, I think, as people start to understand the market a little bit more and things pick up. So, and the final question that I want to ask is, what would you consider your key tools for success and bringing you to where you are now?
My key tools, I mean, for me personally, and again, I have to stress, this is me and my journey, and what works for me might not work for you. Like for me, it is my morning routine. I get up, I do my breath work, I get in my ice bath, and nothing gives me like a clarity of mind like it. So I set myself up for success as much as I can when I sort of start my day. And ditto, like throughout my day, I take mindful breaks, and I really put that front and center. And then the second thing is community, whatever that looks like to you. But for me, starting Elevate has actually been like such an amazing kind of networking and kind of connection experience for me, actually, because I've just met so many genuinely like-minded people. Mm-hmm. So I've chosen not to traverse a really lonely path with it. I've thrown myself into like the community early on and made sure I found people that I can lean on and share ideas with. And I think that's so important. I think if you lock yourself away and you just get stuck in your own head, your problems are going to be so magnified. And then just like keeping it real, like keeping it no bullshit. Yeah. And just remembering that, it's a lot of things aren't the end of the world. They might seem like it, and just trying to keep it real and doing whatever you need to do to remind yourself of that, whether that's just, talking to a coach or, talking to other people and not letting things, become massive.
I mean, I was in level that you said no bullshit. You said community. It's basically what I'm trying to learn, right? No bullshit community. So I totally echo that. I don't know how I feel about the morning routine. Mine involves a lot of snoozing.
After retreat, you're right there with it.
It can be completely different. Out of curiosity, what time do you wake up?
I usually wake up at like 6:30.
Okay, so not horrendous.
It's not horrendous. I'm not part of the 5 a.m. club. No. I'm sorry, like that's never going to be me, and that's okay. But about 6:30. I also wake up at the same time every day, even on the weekends. And there's a lot of science around that, like very beneficial. But I also go to bed quite early. I'm also a big believer in getting 8 hours sleep. So it works for me. Yeah.
I mean, like I'm not actually far off when I think about it. I'm a 7 a.m. person, which I think is, when I hear 7 a.m., I'm like, I could do 7 a.m. But if I hear 6 something, I'm like, oh, that's early. Yeah. If it's like 6:45, I'm like, that's early. It's a psychological thing. Like, as soon as you say 6 something, it feels much earlier than I got up at 6 this morning or whatever, or yesterday morning. And I feel like it was a big difference to me. But so I guess whatever works for you, but you've got to keep doing it. And I definitely don't do the same thing on the weekends, although I'm trying to make sure I don't stay in bed ridiculously late, I think. And I think it's something I've not got used to, but I think I'll try. And I know that everyone sort of says a morning routine is, and actually that is a very, very common answer for most of the top successful people. So I feel like and thank you so much for coming in. I hope everyone else found it really valuable. But yeah, I think like your journey has been brilliant, and I think that you've got so much to add. So I guess where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
You can find me on LinkedIn, you can find Elevate on LinkedIn, and you can find Elevate on Instagram. Mine is private. I'm trying to keep some level of boundary in my life. But yeah, find me there.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been amazing having you on.
Thanks for having me.